motherfucker.
Sins of a father aren't always passed down. You reached out.
So sometimes the sins of a father isn't always passed down. And those were the words of Diamond when he was explaining to Tommy why he called Vic Flynn to this sit down, because he knew that Walter Flynn is a man who's stuck in his ways and someone who will never reason or work with the CBI, even if there's money to be made. But he knows that Vic Flynn is someone who doesn't see race, turf wars, or past history and beef as an obstacle to do business, because he's someone who's thinking about the bigger picture, because he knows that there is way too much money to be made if you can find a way to work together. So now we're watching Vic Flynn put all his issues with Tommy and the CBI to one side, while Claudia is working with Mai on their very own drug. And this is why Walter Flynn's empire is crumbling within. And he has a huge part to play in the downfall that we're seeing. But it is definitely not over yet for Walter Flynn, because in an exclusive clip, Uncle Paulie may have just knocked some sense into him before it's too late. So in this video, we're going to run through a very powerful scene that could change the course of the Flynn empire, and even maybe Walter Flynn's ways. But we're also going to have a look at the impact that Vic and Claude's drug business could have in the form of death predictions. So we're going to touch base on the story behind Uncle Paulie's son, Andre, as well as Dahlia and Mai. But let's run through this exclusive scene first, which is a very powerful and deep conversation between Uncle Paulie and Walter Flynn, which may even cause Walter Flynn to consider a change of some of his ways. Because we see Walter Flynn looking at a picture of Vic and Gloria, and we all know how much he doesn't approve of their relationship, and this is a huge issue for Walter Flynn, because we know that Vic Flynn is ready and he wants to change the game, change his family business and adapt to the modern way of making money. But he's also got this love for Gloria, which is another problem between him and Walter. Now, over the course of the Power universe, we've seen a constant theme of disconnection and troubled relationships between parents and their kids. We've seen it with Ghost and Tariq, Raquel and Kanan, and even more recently with Drew, Diana, Kane, and Monet. And it is definitely the same case here in Power Book 4 Force, not just with Vic, but with Claudia as well. What Uncle Paulie says in this scene is definitely going to hit Walter.
We can try and control everything with our kids. But love's a fucking tornado, Walter.
Some things you can control when it comes to kids, but love is something that can't be controlled. But as we move through this scene, Uncle Paulie also mentions how he still got a chance to make things right with his kids, whereas when it comes to his relationship with Andre, he doesn't. And this is why he's trying to make Walter see sense before it's too late for him, and also because he's got 2 kids who are looking to take his crown, and that's a problem in itself. And this scene definitely hits Walter because you could tell by his reaction, it's the first time we've seen him sit back and not have a response, which is definitely unlike Walter Flynn. So are we about to see him take a different approach to what we've seen before? Because not only does Walter Flynn want to carry on leading the Flynn family organization, I'm sure he wants to stop this internal struggle for power with his kids as well. Because again, as we've seen in the Power universe, this internal struggle for power and independence is a dangerous game that can have consequences for the whole family, and we only have to look at the most recent example with Diana blowing up the whole family, which had a knock-on effect which ended up in secrets being revealed, deaths, and secrets being created off the back of old ones. So Walter Flynn needs to adapt his ways, or he's gonna risk losing his business, his kids, his reputation, and we all know there is a bigger boss that he answers to in Ireland, and they won't be happy with how things are being run. They also work with the Greeks, Italians, and Polish, so Walter Flynn has to try and find a way to make things work when it comes to all of these different aspects, and he needs to change his ways soon, because both Claudia and Vic are frustrated, and they're both making moves. But we're also going to have a look at how Walter Flynn is right in some ways in just a moment. But Vic even said it himself in this conversation between Diamond and Tommy, that he doesn't want to inherit a crumbling empire, because he knows the way Walter Flynn is running it, there's going to be nothing left to take over when his time comes. So we're seeing Vic Flynn actually taking a really mature approach, putting aside any beef that he has with Tommy, and him seeing Gloria, and putting money first. But not only is he putting this shit to one side, he's proven his worth to Tommy when he savagely took out 2 Serbs, telling Tommy they're in it together now. But he also knew that Uncle Paulie's wife wasn't attacked by the CBI, because he said it wasn't a move that the CBI would make. So it really does make me think, is Walter Flynn hiding the real truth behind the attacks and just throwing the blame on the CBI? Exactly like Diamond said, because they're an easy crew to blame apparently. So this brings me on to talking about Uncle Paulie and his son in a bit more detail, because you can tell he feels some guilt and remorse for the way Andre's turned out, because we all saw he does care about his son, otherwise he wouldn't have given him fresh clothes and money. Now he's also trying to convince him to get into rehab and clean himself up, but he knows this is a long shot because we're gonna hear him telling Walter Flynn that he's got a second chance with his kids, but he doesn't. And to add to the exclusive clip that was released, it really does make me think about this theory that was put to me by one of the regulars, DJ Talks, when he said, I think the introduction of Paulie's son means he will overdose on the new drug that Claude develops, and I can definitely see something like this happening because it's something similar to what we saw happen with Kanan when he made his first batch of product in Raising Kanan, which caused a hell of a lot of bodies to drop on the streets. And we all know that you are one bad line or one bad pill away from being killed, which is the reason why Liliana said she only takes product that she cut herself. So I can definitely see something like this happening, with Andre being killed by taking a drug that was made by Claudia's pharmacist, Dahlia, that her and Mai have strong-armed into working with them. And if this does happen, then you can only see an internal conflict between the Flynns getting even worse than it is. And if this does happen, going back to how I said Walter Flynn may be proven right in the end, let's see why.
It's not fucking outdated. It's dependable.
Now the reason why they don't mess around with the new drugs is because the stuff that they sell is dependable, and you have to say Walter Flynn may be taking the wrong approach when it comes to his kids and the positions that he has them playing, and Vic's love life, but he may be proven right with this new designer drug that Claude has, because the last thing you want is for your drugs to start dropping bodies on the streets, which then attracts attention from law enforcement, exactly in the case I mentioned with Kanan in Raising Kanan Season 1, and it's exactly what Claude Flynn warned Vic about in the very first episode.
Getting caught up in some low-rent shit while the feds are sniffing around is not a good look for us. The reason we're not in coke is because it fucks with our very legitimate front.
But both of them are fed up of playing the role as bookkeeper, and in the case of Vic Flynn, just being the boy under Walter Flynn, they're willing to turn their backs on the Flynn family business and start their own organization. But if this does happen with a bad batch of drugs being made, then all this is going to do is cause a chain reaction, because they're going to get down to the source of the problem, and that's how Mai introduced Claudia to this drug, with Dahlia being the one who created it. So just adding to this plot and theory, if Uncle Paulie's son is killed by taking some bad drugs, then Uncle Paulie and Walter Flynn are definitely going to be out for blood. And I've mentioned this before, that I don't see Mai lasting the full season, especially with how Mai is the middle woman between Claude Flynn and Dahlia. But now that Claude Flynn has got her introduction to the person who can make the drugs, what does she need Mai for? Because when you're the middle person, once you give up your source, you can then become expendable, because you're no longer needed, and I can definitely see this being the case with Mai. So now as we're seeing the storyline play out between the Flynns, Andre, and Mai, I do think those two could die at some point this season, and if Claude's drug is the reason behind it, it's just going to increase the tension that much more. But drop me all your thoughts down below on the Flynn Empire, especially when it comes to Walter Flynn and the exclusive clip, because is this the moment where he realizes he needs to change his ways, or will he actually be proven right in the end? Because his way and the drugs that they have are dependable, and also, as Uncle Paulie said, he's got 2 kids who are fighting for the crown, but who's gonna win and eventually take Walter Flynn's seat? Is it gonna be Vic or Claudia? Drop all your thoughts down below, as well as your death predictions, and of course if you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 4 Force and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.